It's 5:59.
Yeah, it does. It can take a minute.
It's cold outside.
It is freezing. Okay.
Does your print
We are ready when you are.
Mine doesn't either.
He sits at the front of the stairs or like by our front door. He's like, yeah. Oh, thank you.
Toy box there.
Oh, Dr.
Scale is, it's like,
I have to force him
yeah,
out.
I
to go
picked
to
him
bed.
out at 6, they should have got wired in this.
Oh. But then our German Shepherd, we keep sleep in the kitchen and he can't, and that he's, yeah, like we can't get.
Okay, ready? Okay, we're going to start the meeting. We will now call to order this Community Police Review Board hearing on December 4th, 2024, and the time is 6:00 p.m. The purpose of the hearing this evening is to review the case, or actually review the complaint initially filed with the Salem Police Department as internal affairs case number 24-COMP-0113. Is the complainant present?
Mr. Greenway, that's you.
Oh,
Can you acknowledge that you're here?
oh, yes,
All right, thank you.
I didn't hear my name.
Oh, sorry. I'll try to speak up a little bit louder. Part of the mission of the Community Police Review Board is to provide an objective, community-based, accessible process for the review of complaints involving the Salem Police Department. The board serves an advisory role to the city manager of the city of Salem and reports its findings from the review of unresolved complaints to the city manager. The board may also make recommendations to the city manager for remediation, request the city manager to employ an independent investigator or auditor in appropriate circumstances, and refer to the city manager concerns or questions about the police department's policies, procedures, complaint history, or training history. The recommendations of the board are non-binding. The final decision pertaining to any disciplinary matter and the responsibility of the operation and direction of the police department remains with the city manager, police chief, and the police management team. The purpose of this hearing is to receive statements and testimony and to review evidence that will aid the board in its deliberations and reporting the board's findings and recommendations to the city manager. The board shall receive testimony from both parties. The board and individual board members may ask questions of witnesses. Only board members may ask questions of witnesses. After hearing statements from both parties and all witnesses, the board will deliberate its determination in a closed executive session. The board is limited to deciding whether it occurs with the police department's internal investigation of the issue or whether it disagrees with the department's findings. After making a determination, the board will then reconvene to announce its findings publicly. The board's findings shall be determined by majority vote. The board is required to produce an initial report within 30 days of this hearing, which will be reviewed by the chief of police. Unless additional review is needed, the report shall become final 30 days after initial report is produced. The final report will be provided to the complainant, the officers involved, and city council. The final report will also be presented at the board's next meeting. The complainant will be notified when the final report will be read and may attend the meeting at which the report is presented. No comment will be allowed on the completed complaint review, and there is no formal appeal of the board's decision. This hearing is to be conducted in informal, non-confrontational manner, free of harassment, coercion, intimidation, or undue interruption. The board reserves its right to remove any participant who fails to exercise restraint and respect, who becomes hostile or disorderly, or who creates a hostile environment. The board may also postpone or cancel the hearing if participants fail to exhibit orderly and respectful conduct. Statements of the complaint and witnesses are voluntary. The board will listen to statements that bear upon the complaint, which the board considers material, reliable, and relevant. The board may limit statements at its discretion. Any substantive new information given which was not evaluated by the department in its investigation shall be referred to the police department for further investigation. In the event of such new information, the board may elect to continue or postpone the hearing. Prior to receiving any testimony, we will go around the room and have each party in attendance introduce them or herself and state his or her relationship to the case. So my name is David Reinholtz. I am the chair of the Police Review Board, Community Police Review Board. What I think we should do now is have the board members introduce themselves. Would you like to go?
My name is Kyle Hedquist, and then I'm also a police review board member.
I'm Elizabeth Infante. I'm a vice chair for Community Police Review Board.
I'm Erin Hull, and I'm on the board.
Celine Colvin, I'm one of the board members as well.
Great board member.
I'm Grant Yoder. I'm a member of the Community Police Board.
Right, thank you. Next, let's have the complainant introduce himself. Can you introduce yourself, sir?
Oh, my name's Robert Greenway. I guess you call it complainant or whatever.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. And then representatives from the Salem Police Department.
Lieutenant Steve Galvin with the professional standards. Sergeant Anthony Burke with professional standards as well. And Sergeant Trevor Morrison with professional standards.
Okay, and then city staff.
Sure, go ahead, Nathan.
I'm Nathan Garrettson. I am Assistant City Attorney, Legal Counsel for the board.
And I'm Gretchen Bennett. I'm the staff liaison to the board.
All right, thank you.
And we have a couple of guests too. I don't know.
Oh, sure.
Angelina, do you want to say hi?
May
Or not? It's okay too.
No, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you, Gretchen. I'm Angelina Bacon. I've lived in Salem for 29 years now.
Welcome.
All right.
And Dr. Brown.
Good evening, everyone. I'm sitting here simply observing and watching, and as you probably know, I am Salem City Councilor elect for Ward 5.
Thank you. All right, I will now explain the complaint, a summary of the police department's internal investigation and request for review. Except for the complaint, the involved officers and the representatives, any witnesses in attendance will be asked to leave during the testimony of other witnesses. Once the testimony of all witnesses completed, the witness will be allowed to remain during the public proceedings. All right, so I apologize if I butcher this. It is handwritten, the complaint, and so I'm going to try to read this, but I think it's important that the board members again hear the complaint. Basically, question 1 asks to describe the police conduct which is the subject of your complaint. Be as specific as possible. Let's see. It says 3 case numbers over a period of 3 months for same complaint by BCD, a state of Oregon on Edgewater Drive. The 3 case numbers were 204-000-75003. Case number 240-76063, and then case number 204-0061420. Just to let you know, in that period, I interacted with 3 2-man patrol cars. So I think what they're saying is there was 2 police officers in each patrol car. All 3 times, police. I'm not sure what this says. And then it says with Lieutenant Vidlow, no one ever let me know body cameras were on. I had to ask police requirements that must be less informed citizens. First interaction, BCD called security and security called police. It says 2 officers, security explained. I explained, asked if I had to leave, answer was no. Second time, 2 officers, security explained, I explained, officer ended up calling Polk County DA office, and then parentheses says supposedly, he could not come up with the names of the people he talked to. Very suspicious. How do I or anyone know if he actually talked to them. I went to district attorney's office. As suggested, they could not verify conversation. Told me had to.
Told me had to leave.
Told me had to leave, but I'm not sure what that is.
I came back,
Oh, okay.
had to ask different.
Okay. So they told me I had to leave. I came back. If I come back, I had to ask different questions of the BCD people. Number 3, the third incident. 2 more officers, same thing. I had to leave or I would be arrested. Told him, got instructions from district attorney office that I could come back if asked different question, which I did. Had intention of letting me stay and then said leave or be arrested. Then started counting each time I asked, so I left. Basic is I went to BCD office to get answers to questions to their code MI505.4. They gave me a email contact who answered 1 out of 3 questions. When no longer could get answers, and they specifically said they answered all. I started going in at least that's intermittently or
At last interaction, I specifically gave them.
okay. I specifically gave them notes as not to cause disturbance, but that was not good enough. They continued to call security and police. I'm not sure. Oh, the law allows me to be at public offices during normal business hours, which I always did. Salem Police had no justification to trespass me. Also, be aware, Gretchen kept telling me that a letter for blank was coming for almost 2 weeks. Then let me know she was wrong. Letter only comes under certain circumstances, but not elaborate. So kept looking and waiting. Check body camera footage will verify most of what I am saying. The question 2 of this form says, what is the desired outcome of the request for review? It says reprimand officers and apology. Number 2, let them know they were wrong in trying to trespass me. And number 3, disciplinary action for not informing of body cam usage. The third question says, state the reason for requesting the review. It says not getting satisfactory answers from police or answers that make sense and not change 3 times no paperwork to their so-called facts. Okay. So that was from the complainant. The response from the Salem Police Department. It says, Salem Police Department informed our staff liaison that the complaint was contacted by Professional Standards Unit on September 9th, 2024 to make a complaint on Salem police officers. After reviewing each report, body-worn cameras, and a phone conversation with them, the complaint was closed at intake. The incident was documented and closed under our internal case number 24 COMP-0113 as a citizen contact. Complaints which arise from misunderstanding police policy, procedures, and tactics, or from a lack of information about the actions by employees that are clearly within the policy may be resolved at intake and appropriately documented. So at this point,
Oh, thank you.
so at this point, if there are any witnesses that we would ask them to leave.
But I don't see any people who are here as witnesses today.
Okay.
David, before we continue, I just want to discuss a potential conflict that I have. I did work for the Department of Consumer Services about 8 years ago,
Okay.
but not in the building codes division. I worked in the workers' compensation division that was separate from those. I don't believe it's gonna have any impact on my ability to do the case review, but I did want to state it.
Okay, so there's been a conflict disclosed. Does any board member see that as a conflict?
I don't see it as conflict.
No, I don't either.
Thank you.
Thank you for disclosing that. Okay, so the first presentation of information will be offered by the complainant, Mr. Greenway. We will remind the board to hold questions until the complainant has finished all statements.
So if you wanna come up, it'll be easier for you and everyone to see each other. If you don't mind, thank you.
So, Mr. Greenway, do you agree that your statements will be true and honest?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. You may proceed with your testimony.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to apologize to Lieutenant, however you pronounce it, Vidro. Because I made in my statement that he didn't tell me about the body cam, but after reviewing the thing, he actually did. So I want to bring that up for the other people didn't. As mentioned in what you had read, the whole thing started as a simple request to the BCD and their boards about that code 1504.5. I spent many months researching it. And at the point that we started getting into tit for tat, I knew more about it than they did. The board and the BCD wouldn't acknowledge that there was a problem with that code, even though I proved it to them, which is another matter. That's why I kept going back down there. So, that was the part of that. One thing I want to bring to light right up front, and because it shows up in, I think, 2 or 3 of these incident details, where it came from and who said it. And I'm sure you guys read about it, that the statements that the police made in here made a statement about a gun. And there was no such thing, because nobody can come up with it. That came up through another action through the Department of Administrative Services, which is part of the BCD is supposedly run by the DCBS, which is the Building Codes Consumer Business or something. They're supposed to have jurisdiction over the BCD. So when I couldn't get answers from the BCD, I went to the people that supposedly knew what they were doing and had control over them. Even though it says in their literature on the emails, and anybody can check it, it specifically says in there that the DCBS has jurisdiction over the Building Codes Division. So that's why I went there. And so that's when I got this, what they call a notice of exclusion, which is actually known as a, what's it actually called here? It is, NTO, notice of trespass. And that's where this thing came from, that the police came up with about the gun, and I'll read it to you because it all ties in together. It says here, on September 3rd, you made a threatening remark during a visit to the Labor and Industries building, specifically stating, do I need to come back here with a gun to finally be heard? And then it says after that, or to words to that effect. So right there, that negates the whole thing, because it said specifically stating But then it says to words of that effect. Nobody knows who said it. I've asked questions. I've gone to the heads of all these agencies and said, provide me with a document that says that I use those words. And nobody's come up with it in 3 months. And besides that, this document that was written, who they tried to trespass me, was signed by this Travis Schnitzel, operation and maintenance manager. Well, I come to find out after the fact that he didn't even write this. The person that wrote it was the deputy chief of the DCBS. He wrote this, and the Schnitzel guy signed it, which is seems kind of weird, you know. And then that statement in there, security and industries building specific stated. It doesn't say who stated. I asked the OSP, I asked the people there, I asked the police to come up with a statement, but nobody knows where it came from. But they sure put it in their report here 3-4 times, and they had nothing to do with it. This building had nothing to do with them, but they put it in their report. So I don't know what, you know, the HELL is going on with that. So that's one of the main things I wanted to bring, because it was written in here. And if they're going to write it in here, then they need to put in there where they heard it from. And they can't, because nobody knows. Nobody to this day, after 3 months, has come up. I asked them for a written statement, notarized, that who wrote that about me. Nothing. Okay, then we go on to what happened with me and my interactions with the police. As you read the thing 3 times. Each time, I guess they call it a different outcome, but I was there for the same reason. Okay, and that was to get answers to that whole thing started around that code. And that's all I want to do is find out about that code. It was like pulling teeth out of an alligator. Nobody would come up with a straight answer. They kept beating around the bush and stuff. They said they answered my questions. That the one lady, if you, let me ask this. I'm guessing all of you reviewed the videotapes, right? Okay. The one lady that Officer Renz, or how does he pronounce his name?
Officer Renz.
Renz?
Yes.
Yeah. He went in there and told her, you know, at the end, what the outcome was from the meeting with the DA people. And she said that I had meetings 15 to 20 times. Another one in here from the officers said it was 7 to 8 times. There's another one that said it was 10 to 15 times. So nobody knows how many times I actually went for an in-person meeting. You know, they would know because they offered it. And to my recollection, it was probably 5 times. All they had to do was ask Mr. Warren, he's the one that I actually talked to, who actually never gave answers. I asked questions. He never gave answers. He was referred it to somebody else. When I got emails back from him, they only answered half the questions. You know, so I don't know how important that is, but that's the reason why I kept going back. Okay. About the law enforcement officers. Before I even started this going to the buildings, I went to the police department and I went to the Polk County DA and I asked them what my rights are. You know, what am I allowed or not allowed to do? Okay. When I went to the police, they told me go to the DA. When I went to the DA, they go to the police. So I wanted to find out what I was able or not able to do without getting, you know, so-called trespass called, you know, on to be, you know, so I don't know where all that came from. Evidently the training that the officers have on the laws that they're supposed to enforce must be very sketchy. You know, they're trying to enforce laws that they don't really even know about. After all this, I started studying the trespass laws, you know, and everything that I said in there about that I'm allowed to be there. If it's an open thing, just like with any public building, if they have posted hours, I'm allowed to be there, okay? They can only trespass me if I break a law. Well, you can't use trespassing as breaking a law because I haven't broken a law of trespassing. You know, if you're there loitering or some other things, then there's something to go by. And to prove that Ren's guy had to call the DA to get confirmation of whether I can be there or not. And the lame answer that they gave, which they won't even fess up to, you know, that I can be there, that I can't be there and ask the same question, but I can be there if I ask a different question. So that kind of shows that it's a moot point, because when I was there the third time, I asked a different question. You know, they said that I was disruptive or anything. How can I be disruptive if I didn't even talk to them? As I put in the notes there, the second and third time I went there, I didn't even talk to them. The second time I handed them a note, a piece of yellow paper like this, that says I want to talk to this person, or this person. Okay? So how can I be disruptive? I just asked them to let me talk to these people. You know, that's when they said no. That's when they called the security. And then the third time when I went there, that was based on the premise that the DA said, ADA or whatever you call them, assistant, you know, that I could be there if I asked a different question. So when I brought the paper there, I didn't ask anything about 1504.5, which I've been talking about this whole time. I asked for different people and different board members, and a completely different question about the plumbing division. The M on there means 1504.5 means mechanical, okay? The mechanical board is the one that provides that information. When I went there for that third time, I asked a completely separate question of a different board and a completely separate question about plumbing issues that I had found out after researching all this, because I moved into a new house. That's how this all started, is me moving to a new house in Dallas that didn't meet codes. But everybody, you know, starting at the city. So that's how I ended up at the BCD, is because the city wouldn't take care of it. So I went to the next thing, which is the BCD. They wouldn't answer the questions, so that's when I went to the DCBS. It's been a nightmare for this whole thing. And then because they don't like me being there, they call security. Security calls the police. Here come the police. First interaction, as you can see on these things here, nothing was done. Evidently, because there's no anything on the 718 that they couldn't get a hold of the person that called. That's the first set of officers. I asked him, I said, do I have to leave, you know, the premises, the BCD? And then he said, no. So they left and I went upon my thing. The second time, that's when that officer Renz came, you know, told me I had to leave. You know, you saw the footage and all that, you know. And you know, as far as I can tell from reading the laws, I've researched it online, I've Googled it, I went to the library, and I can't see anything that I did wrong, especially when that Renz was told by supposedly two people. We have no idea who the two people were. He just says that he talked to two ADAs. He didn't take their name, and I don't think that's very professional. If he's going to get information from two ADAs from Polk County, okay, that's going to cause me to get trespassed, then he better damn well know who he's talking about and who he talked to. So I go to the ADA, I go to the Polk County after the fact, and I says, what's going on? You know, who did, you know, the assistant, I think it was the assistant DA that said, well, we don't have to tell you anything. And that goes to the point there. How do I know, okay, that he talked to the person, that he even talked to anybody in the office that was an ADA. He could have been talking to the secretary with no names. There was nothing in writing. You know, if the ADA gives binding, whatever you want to call it, binding law that I can or cannot be somewhere, then I would think they would have had to write it down, you know, that the police called me on a certain date. I gave them this information, you know, that the guy can be there or can't be there, which doesn't make sense because I've looked up all the case law for trespassing, and there's no case law that mentions anything about whether I can be there because I asked a question or a different question. It's like they made it up. You know, if they have confidence in what they said, then how come they don't have any justification for it, any notes or anything? It's like they talked to a ghost. You know, I mean, I could call up the AD and say, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, this person here that's at my house, I could shoot them because they put their foot through the threshold of my house. You know, you're gonna take my word for that? No. Yeah, so basically, then the police made their judgment on that. And when I went the third time, that Diaz just wouldn't give it up. He was the third person, and I kept telling him, I'm allowed to be here. Just call up Renz and ask him, you know. So does the ADA have more power and authority than the police department? That's the question. So she said that I could be there, and Diaz, and he said it in the thing, I've told you 10 times you have to leave. I didn't have to leave. I had justification to be there. Just because they didn't want me to be there. And when I took that note in there, okay, that asked that I wanted to talk to somebody about the plumbing code, which was different, they didn't even acknowledge it. The first thing he did is threw it away, called up security, and told them and that started the whole process of them calling the police and everything, that they wanted me trespassed. When Renz even went to the head of the department of the BCD, it's on video that he went in there and talked to her, and he specifically said, if he comes back and asks the same question, he can be trespassed. If he comes back and asks a different question, then you can't trespass him. Well, Diaz came and he made the decision not knowing or didn't care that I had the right to be there, because I asked them a different question and they didn't even acknowledge it. They didn't want to. They just didn't want me there because I'm bringing up stuff that makes them look bad. That's the whole reason that this is all happening, because I caught them in lies. You know, we can go through this, we can have another meeting. You know, they just didn't want to accept the fact that the code that they wrote was wrong, couldn't be enforced, and they didn't want to hear it. So then they call law enforcement on me. Instead of trying to make things right and make the code better, I tried to go, even before all this happened, I went to them. They have board meetings for plumbing, mechanical, they have like 7 or 8 different board meetings. I started going to these meetings and expressed and showed them specifically what was wrong with the codes. Okay, they didn't like that. They even told me one time to get out, even though the head of one of the things told me go to that meeting and says, we have nothing to do with it. When they're the ones that wrote the code, that's what the M in the front, there's M codes, there's C codes, there's R codes, you know, different things. They wrote the code, that mechanical code, and they said I didn't belong there. And the head of the BCS, Mr. I think of his name, Mark Heiser, he's the one that told me to go to the board in the first place. So I go to all these board meetings. Then when all this shit hits the fan, right? The board meetings are supposed to be open to the public, right? Soon as this happened and I made a stink, I'm no longer allowed to go to the board meetings, which is public. You know, they're public meetings that anybody supposedly can go to, that I've been to many a times. All of a sudden, I have to get their permission to go to a public meeting, okay? So I did what they asked. They have and I've done it 4 or 5 times. They have an email address, DCBS director at whatever. And I've emailed hundreds, okay? 4 or 5 times, every time they have a meeting, okay? I've sent a thing asking to go to the meeting. You know what happened ever since then? Up until this point, I was allowed to go. After that, all of a sudden it changed. Every board meeting that they've had since then, they've told me, sent me a note back saying, you cannot go, you have to do it by Zoom. You can't go in person. Now, isn't that a coincidence that I've been going to all these meetings? When this happens, I'm no longer allowed to show up in public meetings that by statute, I'm allowed to be at. Anybody can go to these board meetings. These 7 or 8 board meetings that are held 3 or 4 times, 5 times a month. So basically what this whole thing is coming down to is they're just trying to shut me up. Because I call them out on something that they're not doing their job. This whole thing, this 1505 is made, okay? And I couldn't hear, excuse me, what you said, that you had some dealings with boards or the BCD or something like that.
I work for the Department of Consumer Business Services in the Workers' Compensation Division 8 years ago, so a separate division.
Yeah, so as you can see, I did my due diligence. I tried to follow their rules. Even one board meeting, the last one for the mechanical division, which is the one that wrote this code, they canceled the meeting because they said they didn't have anything to talk about. Yeah, they had something to talk about. Their code is not right. Their code is dangerous. The whole reason they wrote this code is to protect the people. Most code that's written is to protect the people in the houses that they're living in. So I called them out on a bad code, and this is what started this whole thing. Okay. So let's go here and see if there's anything that I missed. Oh yeah. This here that they gave here, the law requires, it's called an NTO, requires due process. Before they can issue this, they're supposed to give me a chance to rebut this. They didn't. They just decided that they were going to trespass me for thing. It says right here on the back. These procedures are intended to allow you to conduct any needed business with the DC bid only within the conditions outlined in this letter. If you would like to appeal this decision to restrict your access to locations stated in this letter, which the Building Codes Division is part of it, and 5. They listed five places. I've never even been to 3 of them. They're trying to trespass me for 3 places that I've never even been to. So get that one. Then they said I can write a letter to them if I want to overturn this or have questions about it. It says right here, you can, the decision to restrict your access to the location stated in this letter, you must notify Ms. Shannon Ryan, Enterprise Asset Management, okay, must notify administrator at 350 Winter Street. And I found out after the fact, I went down there, took my rebuttal to what they had put it, right? And what do I do for going down there? I get arrested for trespassing. When it says in here that I can go down there and drop it off. It doesn't have an email address or anything. So I went down there, dropped it off to them. The OSP calls and says, you know, we're going to arrest you. You need to show up. So they did arrest me. I went down there like they asked me to do, and they arrested me, threw me back in a cop car. That's how bad this is getting. Another thing is is the OSP is supposed to have jurisdiction all over state offices. Why the Salem police got involved in it, I don't know. If you call them and ask them, one of their duties as an OSP, Oregon State Police, okay, is to protect all state buildings and agencies. So why is the police coming when it should have been the OSP? So I go to the one on Edgewood, which is a state office, and here comes the Salem police. I go to the one down there on Winter Street, which is also in Salem. The police didn't show up there. The OSP show up there, and they do the same thing. Okay, let's see here. Let's go through each one of these individually. The incident reports. I think there's really nothing on the first one because that's the one that they told me I could stay. I attempted to make contact. That's them, the police. They said, so basically they called and then I guess they didn't go inside and try to talk to them or whatever. They just tried to call them. The 829, which is the second one with Renz. That's where he says, I've arrived, good contact involved. Public did not have to, like said, I didn't have to leave. Coming to state of, he'd been coming to state Oregon building for a long time. Robert, over the period of time, that meeting always goes in circles because Robert's unwilling to accept answers. I'm willing to accept answers if they would just give me answers. The problem is they wouldn't give me answers. Or if I asked questions at the meeting with Mr. Warren Johnson, he wouldn't give me answers. And he was the head inspector for all of Oregon, and he couldn't give me answers. He had to farm out the answers to the other people, and when I get answers back, half of the time they didn't answer all the questions. They would answer one or two, so I'd have to go back and ask again. And that's where here says, CUMP stated that they have had 7 to 10 in-person meetings. So here it states at 7 to 10. The lady inside there said it was 15 to 20, and somebody else said it was 10 to 15. And it was more in the like 5. I'm sure that the people there at the DCB knows how many times I had a meeting with Warren Jackson. And I can pretty much say right now it was probably 5. That I actually went in and had a meeting with him alone, not with any of the other people, okay, that were involved in this. Okay, then it went on or whatever, you read all the stuff. That's where they went and had the DA guidance or everything, which is a farce as far as I'm concerned, because nobody has provided proof that he even talked to somebody from DA. He doesn't know their name. When I went there and asked them who they talked to, they didn't know who they talked to. There was nothing in writing in their logs that said they called at this time. The police kept asking, what number did you call? I said, well, ask Reds who he talked to. He's got the number. He called him on his cell phone. So they know when they called, how they called, where they called, all about it. And then it comes down here. So the DA said Robert could always return to the business provided he had new business to conduct that was not related to the old business. Simple fact. If this is true, which nobody knows, all I have is what he told me, and he said I could go back. Diaz says, no, you can't be here. Which is it? Either I can be there or I can't be there. That's a problem with the police, okay? The same thing with the body cams. And I admitted that at the police department, I said when I met that Lieutenant Vidro, or however he pronounces it, he did say that, but he was antagonistic. If you notice on the videos, he's always doing this. He's pointing at me. He's threatening me in a threatening manner. Revisit that. I looked at it again. So it said, you still, even though he had no idea what we talked about inside or whatever, I said I had to leave or get arrested. I mean, I would consider that a threat by the police. That'd be like if I go up to you on the street and say, hey, you know, I'm gonna do a citizen's arrest on you because you spit on the sidewalk. You know, if they don't seem to know the law very well, otherwise, why do they need to call the DA to get clarification? That's a good question to ask. That's the thing I know about Vidro. That he did say when he's walking in, if you notice on the video, when he's walking in before he even gets to me. On the video, I heard him say, I got my camera on. The other people didn't. I didn't see anywhere of them. The one, if you notice on one of the videos, it starts out, but there's no sound for about 2 or 3 minutes before the sound comes on. So I don't know what was said in that particular time, you know, from the police. And then here on the 9/24, excuse me, the 9/4 morning under department page 3, read down here to the bottom, 859, unknown weapons per C. Who is C? This is what the police are writing. Unknown weapons per C. Subject has made previous threats of using firearms to the OSP. No weapon seen. They never asked me about a weapon. If I actually had a weapon, or they thought I had a weapon when I was at the Winter Street main office down there, I sure would have damn well been arrested if they thought I had a weapon. And the same thing happened there. You know, they accused me of being unruly and say the same thing happened there. When I went there those 2 times that I was accosted, and I call it accosted by the OSP, I did the same thing. I gave them a handwritten note so that they couldn't say that I was unruly or something. Still, this time was 3 officers. Every time I went there, the OSP came, there was 3 officers for one loaded guy that evidently has a gun. They never frisked me, they ever, you know, no weapon seen, unknown in time. So evidently they must have checked me over when I was at the BCD office on Edgewater. They must have looked at me and noticed that I didn't have a gun. No weapon seen. And then one thing that Lieutenant Vidro did at the meeting inside the building there is he threatened to arrest me because I called 911. And that was on the 3rd meeting because the security officer, who has no right to do it, he blocked the door from me going back in. He physically did this in front of the door when I tried to go back in.
Mr. Greenway, I have a question for you. Is there any other additional information that you haven't reviewed with us already that you want to disclose?
Pardon me?
Is there any information that you haven't disclosed already that you want to add? Some of the stuff you kind of went over already, and I'm just trying to see.
Yeah, well, no, about the one thing was about the gun thing.
Uh-huh.
You didn't, you know, I didn't know about the gun thing until I saw it on here.
Yeah.
You know, and then I didn't know about this thing here. It says subject is calling in now on 911 saying he is not trespassing. I didn't call to say I was trespassing. I wasn't trespassing. I told the officers I wasn't trespassing. If you get the 911 call when I called to say that this guy was not letting me enter the building. He was physically, black shirt that says security on it, he was physically guarding the door and not letting me go back in. And that's what I was calling about. But they don't put that on here. And if they check, and that's not on a log, that's not on a recording, these 911 calls are recorded. Let's have the police provide that. I'm just so. Where else here? Oh yeah, then again here, narratives, unknown weapon per C. Who is C? That's what you need to ask the police, because
So
I
you've
can't
already
answer.
talked about C already. Is there anything else that you haven't
Yeah, see,
mentioned?
subject has made previous threats, armed, no weapon, okay, saying okay. Not true, shall sign. Nothing. Do Who is C? That was the thing, made up name, you made charge, okay. Same thing, trespass, okay.
Because I want to give enough time to the board members to ask you questions.
Yeah, okay. Now let me look here, I'm going to the pages here, see if anything is different here, I made notes. Building, open, there we go. Okay. Already said I have no business in the meeting, in the building, which you know I did. What's going on, what the receptionist, I told you about the notes. Right. Chastised me for calling 911 so I could be arrested for it. There's a mistake on their thing here. They called me Jeremy on the top of page 2. Officer is about him knowing his rights. Jeremy was told 10 times to leave the property. Time, go through my notes here. How about the NTOs? You know, you can't give a verbal, if they want to trespass me, it has to be in writing. That's law. And I have to give, been given due process, a good reason why I can't be there. Has to be told specific reasons. Okay, let's see. There's a U.S. Supreme Court ruling that if you're notified in writing that you have to be removed for a public place, it has to be in writing. You can't just tell somebody. Okay, that's all my notes.
Okay, so is that the end of your testimony then?
Pardon me?
Is that the end of your testimony?
I guess so.
Okay, well, you can see I'm gonna turn over to the board. Does the board members have any questions for Mr. Goodwin?
Yes, I do have a question. Can we go first now?
No, please.
Okay, I have 2 questions. First, from the paper, the letter you received, would you please tell us what NTO stands for specifically from that letter that you received?
Oh, it means notice to trespass.
Excellent, thank you.
Correct? They should know more about things there, right?
Actually,
can't ask them.
You can't.
Yeah.
My second question for you, earlier in your conversation, you had asked who has more authority, the ADA or the Salem Police Department. Were you referencing a conversation you have with the ADA or?
I'll say it again.
Were you talking about a conversation that you have with the ADA where they said that you could be there, or was that?
Well, no, I don't know. I'm just saying that I would think that the ADA has more authority because if the police are asking them what they can or cannot do, then they must have more authority than the police. So if they say I can be there and the police say I can't, then you have to go by what the DA said. You know, makes sense.
Just to clarify, did the DA tell you that you could be there, or was that through the first time?
Well, that was through, I couldn't talk, the DA wouldn't tell me anything. This was all through one person. Officer Perez. He's the one that told me what they said. He's the one that told the people in the head of the BCD what they said. You know, but evidently he didn't tell Diaz what they said.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So I do have some questions. So you received the non-trespass order from this state agency.
No,
That's the thing that you have.
this was from the other agency.
Okay, well,
Which?
Yeah, they verbally trespassed me. They didn't have anything in
the
writing.
letter that you have that you refer to, who is it from?
It's from the building code, what is it called? It's the DCBS, which is the Department of Consumer and Business Services. They're the ones that have jurisdiction over the BCD, which is the one on Edgewater.
Which they trespassed you from, one of the 5 buildings.
Right, yes.
When did you receive that?
I received this, I don't know, they wrote it on September 5th. Okay, but it was delivered to me, they hand, some guy came up to my, drove up to my house and gave it to me.
So
They
you
said,
said,
you know,
okay, so you said you contacted the police and VA to find out my rights before going to DC.
I tried to,
Was it before or after the trespass?
before, no, this was way before, this is before I even went down there and started doing anything. I tried to find out what I'm allowed or not allowed to do. So I asked the police,
Before you went to talk to a state agency. you asked the
before I
police.
started going to the state agency, I asked them, what am I allowed to do? You know,
Was
and I
it-
asked them,
because
they
they-
said, well, ask the DA. So I went to the DA in Polk County, I
Before
says,
your
what am I
first
allowed to do?
contact with the BCD or?
Pardon me?
After somebody told you you shouldn't be here or
No, before.
before you had no contact with these people, you're gonna go and talk to them? You went
Yes,
to-
I wanted to find out what my rights were, so I didn't, you know, so all this stuff wouldn't start happening.
So
Nobody would give me an answer. They said, we cannot give you legal
what was the
advice.
trespass period? How
Pardon me?
long did they trespass you for?
That's
In
what
that
I,
letter. You have a letter of trespass.
oh.
So-
Yeah, that was at the BTV,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it must have some dates.
Okay.
You trespass from this date to that date.
So, okay, okay, here's the thing, and it refers to both places.
Sure.
Even though they trespassed me from 5 places, I've only been to 2 of them. Okay, it says here, since early this spring, on multiple occasions, you have repeatedly come into the building codes office, demanding meetings with staff, using profanity, not true, and at times yelling at staff. I might have yelled a little bit, but then I learned not to. That's why I started passing notes. You have refused to leave on multiple occasions when asked, leading to engagement with security and the police. On September 3rd, I read that to you about the threatening the thing or whatever.
So there's no end date to your trespass, you trespass forever in that letter?
Yeah, until, well, they said remember I read that to you on the back, that I can appeal.
Okay, and you tried
Okay,
to.
but see, the thing is this isn't even legal. Before they can write a trespass, they had to give me a chance to answer what they wrote on here, but they didn't.
But I think that's an appeal for that agency, for this police
Yeah, and I
department.
did, yeah, and that's
I'm trying to
that's
figure out the context.
that's what I did. I took the letter to them, and that's when they actually arrested me for trespass.
OSP, not.
The OSP, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And see, it all ties in together. It's all one big CF, as I call it. It's just unfathomable.
So all your sorry, but not one final question. The 3 contacts you had were before you got the trespass. Is that what you're saying? The written trespass was not given.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, the one, yes. This was at a different building on a different date, because the last date that I was at the BCD, when I was Diaz there, that was on the 4th.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions for board members?
I do, I have
Oh, I'm
follow-up
sorry.
questions, no, you're fine, so I think there's a piece that, you kind of touched on, I wanted to understand kind of what was happening prior to police engagement, right? For police to even be called, and I'm putting myself in your shoes, as well, and also the police kind of trying to look from both sides here. So were there at some point, do you feel some interaction between you and the state agencies that maybe you got a little heated or maybe misunderstanding or anything?
Yeah, that's when I started going down there, because the meetings weren't getting anywhere. So I went down there, I says, there's specific people that know about that M1504.5, which is what this whole thing is about, that particular code. So I went down there and I said, I want to talk to Heiser, I want to talk to the board, somebody that knows what they're doing, because all I got was, and I even told that Warren Jackson, who is the chief inspector for the whole state of Oregon, but he didn't want to stick his foot out and say, yeah, they're wrong. He kind of hawed around it. So all he would do is he would pass on my questions, to somebody else. And then they would send a few answers back that wouldn't answer the question. They would beat around the bush.
So not to interrupt you there, but I'm just trying to, I understand that portion and discrepancies with codes and so forth, and that becomes more of a civil matter, right? But at what point did that, you know, in your vision, when you were communicating with.
Well, that's why, because they kept
they
kept saying that I was too loud, and I said, well, I'm loud because I talk loud because I'm a little bit hard of hearing, which you can tell. You know, so they took that as, you know, thing. So that's when I started going in there and giving them, you know, a letter so that they didn't think that I was causing problems or interfering with their operation. In other words, if I'm not talking to them, I can't interfere. I just have them through their little window there. I hand them a letter saying, I want to talk to so-and-so and so-and-so.
And so I'm just trying to understand here, so, you know, the police perspective is, you know, they're withholding, you know, withholding fees, making sure everything's
Yes.
legal.
Yes, well, I understand that, but see, the thing is it went through them to security, to the police. Well, they even called the wrong people. Like I said, the state offices are done by the OSP. They even told me that. I said, well, how come, you know, you're here and, you know, when I went there, and they said, well, we have jurisdiction over state agencies. You know, like they're, you know, they guard the governor and all the Capitol building and all that. That's their job, is to protect the state building. So
I'm just trying to understand,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you know, how the police got to
Yeah.
be involved, right?
yeah, I tried to work with them. That's why I started handing notes, and instead of them, you know, providing information or whatever, or having to sit down, I even told that one, I said, why can't you just bring these people in here so we can hash it out without going, you know, here and then back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. You know, they would never ask a question. Like I said.
So things did get a little bit disruptive and, you know, kind of
Well,
hostile.
yeah, one time. Yeah, but that was before. They didn't call the police at that one, and that's why I made a decision, you know, to not cause any more problem, you know, because they thought I was disruptive because I was questioning them. And so that's when I started handing them notes, but so they didn't even, that one note, the second one, which was completely separate on a separate answer, they didn't even look at it. I said, I want to talk to Mr. Rocco on the plumbing thing or whatever. That's what it says. He just basically threw it up, said, get out, you know, you're trespassing, called security.
Before you're done, I have one more question, sorry. You made your appeal with them, right? You dropped it off. You may have been arrested, but your appeal went somewhere, or is it still going on?
Yeah,
Maybe
but-
relevant, but.
That's a whole nother thing.
Okay, so you have other complaints with the OSP as well?
Well, no, that's a whole nother thing, is the thing. It's supposedly they lost it, even though I hand delivered it.
Okay.
And 2 months after I sent that, I dropped off that letter, gave it physically to a person, right? And said, can you give it to this person? Well, it's me that this address they gave, she's not even at that address. The person that wrote this, O'Shea, and the Travis
So you
guy.
said you researched all the rights and laws
They-
regarding the state appeal process. Did you make it another one? No?
I've tried to go to every agency in the thing. I've gone to the DOJ. I've gone to the Secretary of State. I can show you emails that they never answer on the board members and stuff like that. They're appointed by an agent, by an arm of the governor. And I'll have the lady peoples there. I says, how do I get rid of one of them? They're not doing their job.
To appeal, to appeal through, right?
Well, that's on the thing. On the appeal there, they lost it. After 2 months, I said, I didn't hear from them.
Okay. Do you have ability to put another appeal?
Pardon me?
Do you have an ability to put another appeal or?
Yeah, I sent in something else.
Okay.
Yeah, after the fact. After 2 months, if they didn't act, I had to write to them and said, I haven't heard anything about the appeal. And they said, we lost it. Well, how can you lose it when you actually physically give it to somebody?
Sure.
And the address they told me to take it to was the wrong address by the people that were in the agency.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, let me ask you, you said that on your, I have one more question for you.
Okay, I'll
Sorry.
get over here, I can hear you better.
Yeah, you said that on your third attempt, it was about a separate issue,
Yes,
because that was plumbing, not mechanical.
yes.
Was that separate issue related to the same address, or was that related to a different address and project?
It was a general.
Okay, so it was not.
See, that this whole 1504 doesn't just affect me, you know, and my building, okay, my house. I just learned about it because I bought a new house. It affects everybody in the state since they put this 1504 into action, which was in 2021. It affects every new house that was built after 2021. So that's why I was so insistent upon it. It just didn't affect me. It affected every new homeowner in the whole state of Oregon. See, it's not just localized.
Is that a legislation you're referring to, 1504? It's just.
No, it's a board. The board is appointed.
Is a.
These boards are appointed by the governor's office.
Mhm.
And I talked to the two ladies, one is the head person that there's appointment.
No, I'm asking 1504, is that a Senate?
That's a
bill or-
code.
It's a code, okay,
Yeah.
that's the one.
So just to clarify, your first couple of contacts with the Salem Police Department, or I'm sorry, I guess your first contact with Salem Police Department was in regards to your question on mechanical code. Your third one on 9-4, that was just your general question, not.
Yeah,
related
well,
to your-
yeah, it was specific. I don't know what the code is.
That's right. We don't have any discretion
Yeah.
over the actual.
Oh, no, I know.
I'm just
Yeah, I
terrified.
understand that. Yeah, I'm just telling, this is what started this whole thing that's been going on for 6 months. And this is where it ended up at.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I'm not for you, but just to clarify over the board, as we say here, on the record. We are here to kind of, because I feel like there's two different agencies, two different matters, and we're here to look over the police involvement. And although I understand your frustration with Department of Consumer Business Services, but we're kind of, need to narrow back in on,
Yes,
What
this
happened
is
with the police?
specifically to
yeah. That's what I'm just.
the reason
Much as
why.
I sympathize with. your-
The reason why it overlapped was because the Salem police used supposedly information about the gun from the other agency. They brought it into it. There was nothing about it until they brought it in.
Thank you, Mr. Greenway. So next we will have
Sergeant Morrison.
Sergeant Morrison from the Salem Police Department.
Yes.
Sergeant Morrison, do you agree that your statement will be true and honest?
Yes.
Please proceed.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone's time, as you can, and I appreciate Mr. Greenway's testimony. I know it's been really frustrating for him. So part of my responsibility is with my office. I've been in my office for about 3 years in professional standards. And so we receive hundreds of calls every day, not every day, but every year. And so we triage those as they come in, right? And so part of my job is to look at policy and procedure, and did the officers follow policy and procedure, right? Obviously, citizens have a wide variety of things they talk about that they are frustrated about, and Mr. Greenway's no exception, right? Gretchen, do you mind pulling up the PowerPoint?
No.
And just, I want to give kind of a timeline and what we look at. So you kind of look at it from where we come from, and just how we look at things. And I won't ramble. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is regarding 24 COMP 0113. The allegations that I looked into based on the complaint form that was received from our office, or to our office from Mr. Greenway, was action or inaction by police officers, whether they had authority to trespass Mr. Greenway, and then the body worn camera. Are they required to essentially give notice when they turn on those cameras? So that's what I investigated. Go ahead and go to the next one. And so this is just a summary of what I investigated. So on the 3rd, Mr. Greenway submitted the complaint with our office. And he felt that Officer Renz did not have authority to trespass him from the state-owned building. Mr. Greenway accused officers of misconduct as well as the Polk County District Attorney's Office. Go ahead. So that's what I was looking into and the basis for that.
September 3rd, right?
September 3rd. What did I say? Oh, I said December. Yeah, look at that.
Okay.
December, September. Can't happen, can it?
So the complaint was received on September 3rd.
September 3rd, yeah. Go ahead to the next slide. Good catch.
It's not moving anymore.
The December thing broke.
This button, I think it did.
That's true.
Doesn't anybody know? Oh, here we
There
go.
we go.
Coming in hot.
So I got it right on that one, September 3rd. And it was reported to happen on the August 9th of 2024, the incident with Officer Renz. And so on this date when I got it, so what I do is I look at all the evidence or exhibits that I have, which is to include body worn camera, to review all police reports written in this incident and other incidents. And so I reviewed all those. Essentially, I do a scan on Mr. Greenway. These are all the reports that have been filed. I do that through our report management system. I do that through our dispatch CAD. And so that's what I did. After I did all this, I contacted Mr. Greenway by phone. And you guys have that conversation. I'm not going to go into great detail. Just an overview is Mr. Greenway was very frustrated with this whole process, and I understand his frustration. Essentially, what I reviewed, I didn't find any policy violation directives that were outlined, and I informed Mr. Greenway of this, and then explained to him that we as police are not allowed to give legal advice. We're not attorneys, nor is any district attorney office in the state of Oregon. In fact, there's signage saying they're not allowed because they're just not allowed. It's a law. So they're not going to give legal advice, and I urged him to seek legal counsel if he needed that legal advice. Kind of went round and round, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. I explained that to him, and so I closed it as a citizen contact, and that's per our policy 1010. And then on the last page, so the last slide, I just included what's a citizen contact, what's not. Okay, a citizen contact are inquiries about conduct or performance that, if true, would not violate department policy or federal, state, or local law, policy, or rule, may be handled informally by a supervisor. Such inquiries generally include clarification regarding policy procedures or the response to specific incidents by the department. Citizens contacts also include a potential policy violation in which no further action is requested, right? And then it talks about informal and formal. I included those. And so at the end of this investigation, it was a sitcom because, again, there was no glaring policy violations or the officers did. And officers contact, I explained this, officers contact our district attorney's office every day to seek counsel on criminal matters, which is what Officer Renz did. His reports included in the packet that you guys received, so I'm not going to go into great detail on that. But that really concluded my investigation on this, and that was my involvement. So.
Can I ask?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what we heard earlier was there were 3 contacts with Salem PD,
Yes.
7/18, 8/9, and 9/4.
Mhm.
So 9/4 is the date you talk with the complainant.
Correct.
I'm assuming that happened before or after the.
I believe it was before. I'm assuming it was before.
Because
That's
yours was the individual contact.
right. Correct.
Who was the first person?
Well, they're not here. The officer.
No, who was the first officer?
Officer Diaz took the
Diaz.
first report. Officer
No
Renz.
action was taken there to be looked into. The second one, there was not. The third one, we did not look into trespass.
Well, I did look at the report, and that was Officer Beeson was with Officer Diaz. Officer Beeson was the recruit officer.
No, the first one, there was no action taken anyway. So the second one, there was no action taken by our police. Like,
Yes.
the complainant did not complain about the first 2, but the third one was the trespass. And that,
No, I think there was a complaint about all of it total.
so when you received on the 4th, the complaint, did that include the trespass already?
It included everything, all those reports.
So you looked into the trespass
Yes,
and you concluded it was within, there was a written trespass already?
No, so I reviewed officer, I'm not gonna reinvestigate it, so
Yeah,
I
no,
reviewed Officer Renz's report.
Uh-huh.
And he indicated that he had spoke with the deputy district attorney of Polk County, and they had trespassed. That
Verbal.
based on everything, they had he was allowed to trespass Mr. Greenway from the state building, and so at that,
So DA's office trespassed verbally with the, is that
No.
what I'm hearing?
no. The officer trespassed him physically
I understand,
after
but
talking
based on
with
the
the.
DA saying that if
Yes,
he trespassed,
yes,
that's not,
correct. Yeah.
trespass order was not given by our police officer, it was given by the DA's office, that's what I'm trying to clarify.
No,
No, who trespassed?
I don't understand. your
I think
question.
we're using the trespass in different verbs, I mean, there is a trespass order given.
Are you
That's not-
talking about the sheet of paper?
Yeah, our police officers go there, right? And then the business owner, or in this case, the state building, somebody says, this person is not supposed to be here, there's a trespass order, did that
Mm.
happen?
No, so you have that in the things that are given to you, it's the exhibits.
Mhm.
And I can go into it a little bit. So the interview on body worn camera with Officer Renz with the manager of this building codes, right? He goes in there, she explains the whole process, that they've given Mr. Gruno opportunity to meet with an individual within the department. And there's been multiple emails back and forth. If he does certain things, then they're gonna help him, right? If he has new business, he can go into the building. If he has this old business, which has been outlined by that office, the state office, then they're not gonna talk about it until it's dealt with, right? Does that make sense? And so based on what the manager said, that was relayed to the district attorney's office, okay? So the district attorney, deputy district attorney hears it. They didn't have the answer. They go to their supervisor, whoever that was, talk with them, and then they get back with Officer Renz and said, based on what you're telling me, the facts of this case, you can trespass him if he comes with the same old business. If he has new business, he's good to go. The old business, you cannot. So that we don't get we're not part of that portion. We just say, is there,
You're enforcing the trespass order given by basically the DA's office, that's what.
no, it's from the manager. It's from the manager.
Requested of DA verbally correct,
Yeah.
that this is the truth.
That's what I'm trying to, I don't know, maybe you're getting.
Maybe.
Understand.
Yeah, so yeah,
Legally.
legally, the right to exclude someone from property is
Is-
the property owner.
Yeah, that's what I'm
And the
saying, it's
police
not the
officer.
police, police can enforce, but you're not the one who gave the trespass order.
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to
Yes.
say, you didn't trespass the person.
Got it.
You just enforced it because it was given by not SPD, but outside of SPD, because you're not going to trespass, you're not gonna come and say, you're out of here.
Oh, just
That's
out
not
of the blue,
police
like, yeah,
department.
no, we're not gonna look.
Yeah, it's not, yeah, it's the
We have-
business or the owner of this property who can trespass order.
So,
That they
yeah,
got.
well, it's in order, they can say they don't want
Sure.
the person there anymore.
I'm trying to
Then it
de-
becomes criminal.
Established that the
Because
police
there's also a
department did not
statute.
trespass.
Yeah,
They just
I mean-
enforced the trespass that was
yeah,
given to them.
yeah, I think it was, we can pull up the statute. here.
Yeah.
I think I have it here.
And
Six.
and
I
that's
think-
what I'm trying to understand, I wanna peel this onion one layer at a time, so I can understand this.
I'm not a legal expert, so you're gonna have to defer to the attorney in the room, but.
And so explain to me at what level from the very beginning was there cause to order a no trespass?
I don't think it's on us because that's the business and the property. The jurisdiction here is the behavior of the police department. If they were following and they were only enforcing something that at that point was legal. the
But
way they
their
understood.
behavior to move forward
Right?
on
Yeah.
the trespass, and I may be wrong, I'm not an attorney at all, but or there must have been something that happened in that office,
But
right, that the
I-
officers needed to continue to.
I don't think
move forward.
officers-
Correct, which is
Okay,
where Officer Wren spoke with the manager who has control and the authority to do those.
But that's not a
requests.
decision by the Salem Police Department, whether it was right or following their policy or whatnot. They're basically saying, this is what happened, they have to take it at face value at that point, there's a trespass given by the property owner.
Yeah.
And the police department's role at that point is not to question their judgment or whether it was relevant, right or wrong,
I
because
mean,
there's a
that's
different appeal
what we
process.
discussed,
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
There's a
yeah, so
different-
that's what we're trying to say. I mean, the police department just can't say, well, we're gonna follow a trespass, right? For just because they want you off the property, but there's gotta be a reason for it.
I think that's part of the appeal
Yeah,
process with
yeah.
that agency, not with the
So,
police
I
department.
think we're
is my
getting the
understanding.
deliberation part of this.
Yeah.
So I
But
think.
I'm trying to understand, they did not make that decision, they
Right,
were
I'm
just
saying-
following.
Can I try to rephrase your question to me, and that might help clarify for me, would that be all right?
If you wanna rephrase me, sure.
Just.
It's not clear.
I don't have, I have to make sure I have my notes.
The speaker's correct me, I'm a second language speaker, yes, please go ahead.
I don't get to correct you in any way.
I know, but that's how it sounded, can I rephrase it?
Oh, no,
Rephrase your question,
I'm sorry, I
please.
don't mean to step on your
That's
toes, I just
okay,
need to
no,
make
it's
sure that I have clarification. I'm sorry, no.
Thank you.
So Sergeant Morrison, just to clarify from my notes, the people at the property can request for someone to be removed.
Yes.
The DA was spoken to just to receive guidance on that, and then the police department can remove them, but they're not making a discretionary decision on whether or not that's a request from the property, and they're not the ones making that discretion at that time.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure.
Now, this is a little unique because it is public property, and so there is the public property side of it, which is why the DA was consulted on this. And so that's the legal side of it, and I'm not gonna jump into all that. That's where people are smarter than me get paid to do that, and so.
That was the first part, the second part was the body worn cameras, you looked into that too,
Mhm.
right? What was the part, can you just quickly summarize that?
That there's no policy violation.
That's not how it's- Oh,
Oh, wow.
That's really good.
Yes.
Very important. What is the nature of Salem Police Department's ability to conduct police work on where their state offices? Do we have
Glad you
jurisdiction?
asked. Yes, we do have a mutual aid agreement with Oregon State Police.
Sometimes if OSP is busy, you guys Salem PD will come in.
Correct. And that's part of that mutual aid agreement,
Yeah,
correct, yeah. And vice versa, they'll help us, we'll help them,
Yes.
in Marion County, Kaiser, so. Most agencies have that mutual aid agreement where they help each other out.
Right.
So.
Let me ask you, sir, for the body cameras, is there a policy that requires officers to state that they are recording their body cameras? And if so, are there exceptions to that or a time limit with which they be expected to do so?
Yes, there is, and so generally it says body worn cameras, you will notify people that they're being recorded. The exception would be if like a premise open to public, private is a little bit different, but we generally tell our officers, hey, turn on, let them know you're being recorded when you're in a traffic stop, wherever that may be. The exception is like, oh crap, I forgot, I'm gonna tell them later, that type of thing. So it's suggested that you do notify people. But again, we're in premise open to public too, so there's a lot of protection that as well.
So if it's open to the public, it's suggested, so it's not required?
No, it's not required. It's.
Because you're outdoors, so it's public.
Yes,
But if you're indoors, then it would be required?
like if you're in a private building.
No private residence or
Yeah,
something?
exactly. And there's also privacy concerns where we don't turn our body cameras on. There's a lot of lists for that, so.
Fire.
Excuse me.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, witnesses or guests or the complainant, you can't speak at this point, it's the police department time. And if you do, I'll have to ask you to leave, okay? Any questions from the board?
Thank you.
Thank you. So at this point, what I'm gonna do is close the public part of this, and we're gonna go to the executive session. So the only people who remain will be the board members and city staff.
Dr. Brown, Kelly, I'm gonna turn off Kelly. Kelly is our alternate member. I do need to shut down the YouTube at this point in the video, but it's good to see you all. If we come back into public meeting, we will turn it back on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.